Yeah, my diabetes acts more like type 1. I think I only have 1% pancreatic function, so, like, yeah,
Yeah,
she's dead.
pretty much gone. Yeah. Hey everyone, and welcome. My name is Rachel, and I am here with Not Just a Patch. We're so excited to be joined today by the incredible Amy Claire Mills. She's an artist based in Sydney on Gadigal country. Amy's work is very bold, immersive, and deeply rooted in exploring themes of identity and self preservation, often through mediums like textiles, installation, and performance. She's also a passionate access consultant working to make the arts more inclusive and representative for all. Amy also has cystic fibrosis related diabetes, and she's a pump and CGM user who absolutely slays when it comes to coordinating her medical gear with her outfits. So, we are going to chat today about her art, her advocacy, and her personal journey with diabetes. Let's get into it. Amy, I am super excited to virtually meet you and have you here today.
Thank you for having me, and hello, everyone.
So tell me a little bit more about yourself and your diabetes diagnosis.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was born with cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic inherited disease. So my mum and dad had faulty genes. So yeah, I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at birth, and cystic fibrosis affects, like a lot of chronic illnesses, affects a lot of your body. And for me, it meant that I needed a liver transplant, which is quite unusual. Usually, when you talk about cystic fibrosis, it's mainly lung transplants that you hear, but it also affects the liver sometimes. So, 3% of cystic fibrosis people have liver disease, get liver disease, and less than 3%. So, I had to have a transplant when I was 12. And then after my transplant, I was on really high doses of immunosuppressants. And it was like maybe a week after my transplant, and I was still in hospital and recovering, and a little 12-year-old girl. And they were like, "Oh, your blood sugars are really high. We're going to have to start giving you some insulin." And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And they were like, "Oh, we think it's only for about 6 months while the immunosuppressants are, like, so high, and then you'll come off the insulin. We think it's only temporary." But, a lot of CF people do live with diabetes because it does affect your pancreas, and it's kind of a weird CF-related diabetes is a weird beast. It can be type 1 and type 2, so you can have insulin resistance, but you can also not produce enough insulin like kind of type 1. So it is a weird beast, and they didn't know that I would uh, end up having lifelong diabetes, but they said, it's going to be like 6 months. And so, yeah, I had to learn to give injections. This is back in 2001 because I had my transplant almost 24 years ago now. I remember I have a very fond memory of me and this nurse in the hospital room. And we were just giggling so much that we couldn't actually do the injection because I was like, I'd get really close to my leg, being like, I can't do it. And then we'd burst out into giggles. So it
Oh,
was kind of a nice way into learning how to give myself injections. But then it got to like 6 months after my transplant, and I was like, okay, immunosuppressants are down. I'm ready to like come off insulin. And they said, yeah, let's trial it. And that trial lasted less than like 2 weeks. I got really sick, and they were like, oh, we think you have CF related diabetes and this will be lifelong. Um, in terms of my CF related diabetes kind of patterning, I'm more like a type 1. So I don't produce enough insulin. So yeah, I use a pump and a CGM, and I've been using that for, I think it's like 10 years now. I went into clinic. I was sick of doing injections. I was 4 to 6 injections a day, and I was like, I'm over this. I want a pump. I've got private health insurance. So in Australia, private health insurance can help you get a pump. And so I was like, I want a pump. And they'd never done it at the CF clinic before. So
mhm.
I was more like a trial case. And now there's heaps of patients at the CF clinic here in Sydney where I go who were on pumps. So, yeah, I was a trial case and I was like, I want this. I'm on a lot of insulin. And I think they justified it because some people with CF related diabetes don't need that much insulin, or
Mhm.
they might be able to control it with diet. But for me, I was having such high amounts of insulin that they were like, yeah, you're probably a good test case to try out a pump. So, yeah. And now I'm a trailblazer, if you could say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is thank you so much for sharing your story because I am a huge proponent of people understanding kind of diabetes as a spectrum as opposed to types of diabetes because there is this whole people we don't see a lot of people talk about CF related diabetes, even though it's pretty even though it's a rare thing, it's still a group of people we don't get to interact with as much, and I always thought it was interesting, at least where I work as a nurse, I don't ever see them in the endocrinology clinic, they're usually at CF clinics, so but I'm like, there are these people with diabetes that are experiencing, quite a bit of all the things we experience as people with diabetes, and yeah, we don't get to interact with them or see them as often because sometimes, they identify as type 1 or type 2, and then, we sort of leave that part out. Thank you for at least, giving us more information about it and, because 'cause they're definitely it's definitely a thing. So,
Yeah, I just think there's, like, a lot of misunderstanding, and I often do
mhm,
that as well. I often would say, "Oh, I'm type 1," because,
yeah.
yeah, I wear a pump and a CGM, and I've been on it for 10 years, and I do take a lot of insulin
Mhm.
and can't be off my pump. I get sick straight away. So, like, yeah, my diabetes acts more like type 1. I think I only have 1% pancreatic function, so, like, yeah,
Yeah,
she's dead.
pretty much gone, yeah.
So, but yeah, it varies with CF-related diabetes. Some people, it acts more like, insulin resistance, which is more closer to type 2, or some,
Mhm.
it's like a combination. And my diabetes educator is like, CF-related diabetes is different to type 1 because you do still produce a little bit of
Oh,
insulin. It may be minuscule, but it's not as detrimental if you're off your pump for long times because you're
mhm.
still producing that kinda tiny bit, whereas type 1, it's like
Yeah. Right, right. Well, yeah, it makes total sense, and it's definitely obviously, it affects the type of treatments that people need, and then, of course, the type of research we need to have done, obviously, because 'cause we're all just experiencing different types of either lack of insulin or resistance or both or all of these different things. But, yeah, well, can you tell me a little bit about, I guess, how, you're also we'll switch gears a little bit, but you are an artist. So, tell me a little bit about that and how you got into that and what you do.
yeah, so, I guess being someone with chronic illness disability, I grew up in hospitals, so I spent a lot of time in and out of hospital. So I've always had a passion for, I guess, advocating or like telling our stories. Also, growing up, in media, I didn't see a lot of stories reflected about
Mhm.
disability experience, chronic illness. Um, I know that's changing now,
Mhm.
but growing up, like the closest thing that I found that really related to me was the X-Men because they were mutants. They had genetic mutations. I really liked Rogue because Rogue's power was you couldn't touch her or she'd absorb your powers. And so that felt really like this connection to me in a way that I just felt so isolated from everyone and so different. And even in primary school, you know, having to go in and out of hospital, having connections with people and friends was really hard. And so I think art became a way for me to like tell my story. And then it just connected me to a beautiful, rich, deep culture, like disability culture, and access. And I just really found community in the space.
Mhm.
So I just kept creating. And at
Yeah.
first, it was really niche. And now, I just have so many people connect to it who might not have a disability or chronic illness, mental health, neurodivergent, but they just connect in. Like one of my works was unsolicited advice. And I had so many mothers
Mm.
can connect in with that. So I think even when you create art about a specific story or a community, you think, "Oh, only this community is gonna connect with it," but that's not true. Like, we all live in such an interconnected world, and we all have empathy and can understand different experiences, and maybe you haven't lived that experience, but you might know someone who has. You might work in a workplace like a nurse. So, like, I love creating art because for me it feels endless. It feels endless, like, the possibilities of the human experience and telling that is just, like, so deep and vast and I love art. I could rave about it all the day.
Yeah.
I just love art, and I feel really, really lucky and privileged that I get to do this as a job. That's kinda cool. So, yeah, but traditional path, I went to university, I studied art, I studied fine arts, and then I exhibited a lot. I started off small, local community galleries. We have in Australia, it's called artist run initiatives, which are artist galleries. So I started off small and then just kept making and growing and then got jobs in the arts as well. So I worked part time as an arts worker as well as an artist, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And started getting into the advocacy space as well. Yeah, traditional path, I went through art school, but
Yes.
untraditional path is I just have met so many amazing people and community along the way that have really, I think, championed my art. So that's nice.
Now this is so magical to hear because I think like it's sometimes that's like abstract, I think, to people is like the connection in art for some people. Definitely. But I often think of it, it's like when you get on, I think like TikTok is so stinking popular is because of that storytelling and finding people within this like niche and experiencing similar things to you. Like, one of the comments up out there is, "I've never had an original experience," and it's, like, really beautiful to feel that. So, like, it's yeah, that's essentially, like, art is community and bringing that feeling together, and I love that the diabetes and living with a disability plays really into possibly why you went into it and why you do it, so, um, it's lovely. I was actually before I was a nurse, I was a classically trained cellist, and I had to leave that job because in the States, we could not get health insurance when I was a musician, and so, especially at that time, it was, completely inaccessible to freelancers and creatives, but it wasn't until I started working in healthcare that I really began to understand how inaccessible the arts tend to be from so many different facets. So hearing that you're also an advocate and are an access consultant is so cool. What are some of the most common barriers you see in the art sector, and what does true accessibility mean to you?
So you can look at that question kind of twofold. You can look at it in terms of audience experience, so growing your audience, making sure that I don't know, the theater shows. So you can think about it in terms of audience engagement and growing your community. And yeah, can people visit the shows? Are they accessible? Do they have, in Australia, it's called Auslan interpretation or
Mm,
ASL? Do you have tactile tours? Is the work audio described? Like, there's ways of thinking
mhm,
about it in terms of like audience engagement. There's also ways of thinking about it in terms of artists and the barriers that I have faced. I think some of the biggest barriers are attitudinal. I can never say this word. Do you know attitude? People's attitudes. Let's go with that.
yes. Yeah.
And I remember when I was at art school, I created a work about my disability. And I had a lecturer say to me, "This is too niche. No one's going to
Mm,
want to see this. I think you need to make it broader. Like, I don't understand this." And that like, really stuck with me for ages, especially when I was, like, really in that emerging space. I was like, "Am I even making art that will connect with people?" So, it's that kind of thing that I think was my biggest barrier in terms of accessing the art, believing that my art was valuable and worthy and could fit into the cultural zeitgeist and was important as a story to
mm,
tell. I also think about it in terms of yeah, going back to, like, audience experience, so much of I'm a visual artist, so or a fine artist. I think about the gallery space, and traditionally it's been this like white box that you go into and you only use your visual sense to like interact with the art. But that I'm also neurodivergent. And so that's not how I process art or learn.
Mhm.
Engage. I need to touch things. I need to have a sense of play and wonder and exploration. And sometimes I don't get that just through my visual sense. And a lot of people who are disabled need to access art in very different ways. And
Mm.
so, like, creating art that is also accessible is such a big task, and can be really, really daunting. So I think that that's another barrier. And I mean that in a way that, you know, you've got to work with really great galleries, and you've got to really work with great allies who want to also go on that journey with you and want their gallery spaces or their festivals more accessible. So it's about that partnership, finding really great allies in the space who really believe and want to champion greater access for you as an artist and the community. Because, yeah, going back to that idea of the white box and only using our visual sense, that's not how we interact in the world, also. Like, when we're in the world, we're using all of our senses to interpret information. Why, when we go into an art space, are we only using our visual sense? That to me has never made sense because that's just not how I interact in the world. And so then I go into this white box and I'm supposed to like interact in only this one way. So the deeper understanding of art and how, yeah, again, going back, art is so expansive. Why limit
Yeah.
it? Why limit it? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is so validating. Because I totally it's not just, it's mostly how people are experiencing the art that can be thought of as inaccessible as well, which I hadn't, like, really we've occasionally, like, in music spaces have done, like, sensory-friendly concerts where the lights are still on, you can talk and run around, and it's a little less loud, which, again, as somebody who is ADHD is very disturbing as a player for me, but I can imagine for you know what I mean? So, whereas I have some friends, like you're saying, the visual art is difficult for them to process, because it's just it's like it feels abstract because it's not how they are able to connect with it, and process it. So that's really if it I think that's a really amazing way to put it in that if somebody ever feels like they oh, I can't appreciate the things like visual art or go to a museum and enjoy it. It's maybe because I'm not cultured or cool.
I also like, my art, I think, is very fun and playful, and I
Yeah.
think of it as very childlike, and so they're
Uh-huh.
often like, I might get galleries being like, "Oh, can you do the children's thing?" Which I don't have a problem with, because children need art as well to learn
Yeah.
and grow and develop. But I'm like, "It's for adults too. Fun doesn't stop when you turn 18, like, fun is lifelong, and we should embrace that more and embrace, like, yeah, discovery and
Mhm.
playfulness." So I always try to embed that in my work because I think that that is, yeah, something so beautiful and something that we kind of like shut off. I don't know why. I don't know why we have to be serious all the time. Even with disability, like a lot of my art is kinda tongue in cheek, it's kind of, like, sassy. I
Yeah.
always felt a bit, like, sickly sweet, like, you go in and you're like, "Oh, this is so sweet and colorful and beautiful," and then you're, like, kind of like, "Oh, the message. Oh, this is really hard." And I'm like, I want to create a space, a soft space that you can go in, and it may be a really big topic like unsolicited advice, that you have to sit with, but at least you're sitting in a space that's comfortable and you can relax in, and you can kind of have those deep thoughts and understanding of, oh, yeah, I've done that in the past. I've given one of my friends like really bad unsolicited advice when they never asked for it. And you can sit in that space and relax and take that in, and it's like a contemplation space as well. Um, there's no pressure, it's not harsh,
Mhm.
but it is about, like, understanding. So, yeah, it draws you in, and then you have to sit and contemplate for a little bit, and then hopefully you leave, and there's a better understanding.
Yeah. I love that. That sort of it definitely is, I'm seeing a little bit more of this, like, we should be able to decorate our houses and cake if we want to. That kind of vibe is much more prevalent, and so I feel you. I really do. And that ties in so wonderfully to hearing a little bit more about how, at Not Just a Patch, we really appreciate that you love to coordinate your medical gear with your outfits. So tell us a little bit more about that and, why that's important to you.
I mean, I do try. I do try. And you've got a great range of colors, which I love. It's just about, again, being a bit playful. If you have to wear a medical device, like it doesn't have to be clinical. I always, when you go into the hospital, gosh, this is one of the things I absolutely hate. And this will be my grandest idea of like changing the world. I hate adult hospitals. I hate them. They're so clinical. They're white, maybe a bit of blue, maybe a bit of teal if we want to be like, oh my gosh, wild.
I do.
There's never any murals. There's never any fun. As I said, I grew up in children's hospitals, and children's hospitals were the coolest spaces. I know everyone's always like, oh, you grew up in hospitals? And I was like, no, they are really cool. In the Melbourne hospital here in Australia, my dog's about to bark. I'm very sorry, everyone, but I'm gonna try and close the door. Just you can hear another in the Melbourne hospital, in the Melbourne Children's Hospital, they have meerkats in the hospital. So the Melbourne Zoo actually comes and feeds and takes care of it, and it's in the outpatient clinic, and there's meerkats in the hospital. That's so cool. And so like going from a children's hospital, which I always found beautiful. I had my transplant at Westmead Children's Hospital. There was a beautiful garden that you could go into. There was a library in the hospital. There was play equipment. It was always fun. There was art. There was clown doctors. I love a good clown. You go to the adult hospital, it is like boring. Again, serious. I don't know why disability, chronic illness, the spectrum, why it's so boring. It's like you have to be sad. It's a tragedy. You have to be boring. Like, why? And I have so many artist friends who like really like go all out and bedazzle things. I've worked with an artist here in Sydney who we were talking about an exhibition long ago, and they didn't get to do it, but it was like in the pipeline of ideas that they use a mobility scooter and they wanted to bedazzle the mobility scooter. And I was like, yes, bring it on. I think, yeah, that kind of kitschy craft can come into your medical devices. Like, why? Why? So long as they still function, so long as your like glitter doesn't get into the mechanism and ruin the mechanism of the functioning of the medical equipment. Like, why not make it fun? So yeah, I love that you guys have like pinks and purples, blues and greens and reds. Like, that's fun. Why does it have to be clear or white? Yeah, and also, like, I mean, this is a personal choice and this is just me, but I also, like to show it off, I'm not ashamed to have to wear medical devices. That's just it helps me live, great. So, yeah, why not make it loud? Why not take up space?
It's definitely so cool, I feel like, to see more devices out there, and I feel like, yeah, if it has color on it, somebody's way more likely to come up and say, "Oh, I want diabetes too," and, like, it's again about that connection, you know? No, that's it. I was so devastated when Mini-Med, I don't know if you were familiar. It feels like so long ago, probably like 20 years ago, but the pumps, like this kind of Mini Med, they had pink ones and purple ones and blue ones. And
I had a purple one. I loved it. I called it Daisy. And
I was
oh, there we go. There we go. Sorry, sorry, sorry.
they just missed the colorful pumps as well.
Yeah, and then, like, they were like, "You have to upgrade," and it was, like, black, and I was like
I
and then they
know.
were like, "Well, you can get fun cases," and I don't like the cases 'cause, the latex
Yes.
are in, and it's really hot and sweaty in Australia.
Yes.
Very
100%.
So I don't like to wear the cases. I'm so sorry. Bubby, come here. So yeah, I
You know?
I had one. Daisy, I miss her.
Yes. I was like, "Man, diabetes tech really went downhill when we got" it was so fun. And I regret giving up that pink pump with every fiber of my being. So I know what you're saying. But yeah, we're gonna have to talk leopard print. I'll be in touch. But that being said, I really like have resonated with all that you've said. I think you're super fun and super cool. How can more people learn about your work and follow you and all that good stuff? Where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram, Amy_Claire_Mills, I think it is.
Can I name it that way?
Also have a website that's just amyclairemills.com. I'm not great with my website, so I don't have a newsletter or anything like that, but follow me on Instagram. I've got some really cool stuff coming. I can announce it, which is very cool. I'm part of the Liverpool Biennial in the UK, so I'm doing a big exhibition for them, which is based on hydrotherapy and my love of public pools as third spaces, really important spaces for the disability community. So, yeah, I love a good public pool.
100%. I feel you. Well, that is so cool. I hope yes, we will totally link all things Amy in the captions and wherever you are listening or watching from because yeah, I think you got some really cool stuff that you've already done and are doing. So definitely, if people want to follow you, I think that's great. Well, Amy, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really had a great time, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, no worries. All right. Thanks. Bye.